Everyone in the town whispered about Emma. They called her the poor wife, the weak wife, the wife who had nothing of her own. She was married to Daniel, a man from a rich family. But Daniel never treated her with love. Instead, he spoke to her with sharp words and cold eyes. He would say again and again that she was useless, that she was a mistake in his life, that she was only there to bring him shame. From the first day of marriage, Emma had hoped for kindness. She had dreamed of a warm home, a place where she could feel safe. But what she found was different. Daniel's mother laughed at her simple clothes. His sisters mocked her quiet voice. His friends looked at her as if she was invisible. Every day she heard insults. Every night she cried in silence. But she never let anyone see her tears. She promised herself she would stay strong, because deep inside her heart she believed one day she would show them her true worth. Life in Daniel's mansion was never easy. Emma did all the housework while servants watched. Daniel would come home late and ignore her. Sometimes he would bring expensive gifts for himself, but nothing for her. And when she asked why he never thought of her, he would smile with arrogance and say she did not deserve anything. Emma would bow her head, but in her heart she whispered to herself that she would rise one day, and when that day came, no one would laugh at her again. One rainy evening, Emma sat alone in the small room at the back of the mansion, the room Daniel gave her because he said she did not belong in the big bedroom. She held an old photo of her late grandfather, the only person who once believed in her. She remembered his words telling her she was strong, telling her she was smart, telling her she would build something big one day. And in that quiet moment, Emma felt a tiny fire of hope inside her chest, a fire that no insult could kill. But Daniel was not finished with his cruel words. At dinner, he told her in front of everyone that she was nothing without him, that she was lucky he even married her. His family laughed loudly. The sound of their laughter cut into Emma's heart like knives. But she did not cry. She simply lowered her eyes and stayed silent. Inside her mind, she said to herself that silence today would be her weapon tomorrow, that patience today would be her strength tomorrow. Days passed. Weeks passed, and Emma lived like a shadow in the house. Everyone saw her as weak, as invisible, but Emma was not weak. She was only waiting for a moment, waiting for a chance, waiting for something that could change her life. And one afternoon that moment finally came. The doorbell rang. The maid brought a letter addressed to Emma. Daniel sneered when he saw it. He told her she probably owed money. He threw the envelope on the table and walked away. Emma picked it up with shaking hands. Her heart beating fast, she carried it to her small room. She sat down on the bed and she opened it slowly. Inside was a letter from a lawyer. And as her eyes moved over the words, she felt the world shift around her. The lawyer explained that her late grandfather, the same man who once believed in her, had left her something, not money, not land, but a share in a business, a company that Emma had never heard of. It was not large, it was not famous, but it was real. It was hers. And for the first time in her life, Emma held in her hands a small piece of hope, a small seed of freedom. Emma pressed the paper against her chest, her body trembling. She did not know what this company was. She did not know if it had any value, but it was hers. It was a gift from the past. It was a sign that her life could change. She could feel her grandfather's voice whispering in her heart, telling her this was the beginning, telling her this was the chance she had been waiting for. That night, Emma could not sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind full of questions, her heart full of fire. She wanted to run to the lawyer at once. She wanted to ask about the company. She wanted to know if this was her chance to build something of her own. But she also knew she had to be careful. If Daniel found out, he would laugh, he would try to take it away. He would crush her dream before it even started, so she decided to keep it a secret, to hide it deep inside her until the right moment. The rain tapped against the window. The house was quiet, but Emma's heart was loud with determination. She knew she was still the poor wife. She knew people would still laugh at her, but she also knew something no one else knew. She knew her life was about to change. She knew she would not remain invisible forever. She knew that one day the same people who insulted her would whisper her name with awe and fear. And as she closed her eyes at last, holding the letter tightly in her hand, Emma whispered softly to herself, "One day they will all see who I truly am. One day they will all know my name. And when that day comes, I will no longer be the poor wife. I will be the legend they never saw coming." The night was long and restless for Emma. She held the letter close to her heart. Every word from the lawyer burned in her mind. The share of a company, the gift of her late grandfather, The one man who had always believed in her. She wanted to scream in joy, but fear kept her quiet. For she knew if Daniel discovered this secret, he would crush it. Before it could even take root, morning came with pale light spilling into her small room. Emma carefully hid the letter beneath her pillow. She walked out with calm steps. Daniel was already at the table drinking coffee, his mother by his side, his sisters laughing loudly. When they saw Emma, they smirked as always. Daniel raised his eyes and asked why she looked different. Emma forced a small smile and shook her head. She said nothing. Deep inside, she trembled, afraid that her secret was already written on her face. Later that day, when the house was quiet, Emma slipped out and made her way to the lawyer's office. Her heart pounded with every step. Her hands clutched her small bag. She had nothing inside except the letter. As she entered the office, the smell of old books and paper greeted her. The lawyer, a kind man with silver hair, welcomed her gently. He explained that the company she inherited a part of was small but real. It was struggling. Many believed it would soon collapse. Yet he said there was still potential hidden within. If the right person guided it, it could rise again. Emma listened with wide eyes. She had never studied business. She had no experience. Yet she felt a strange courage awaken inside her. She asked question after question. She wanted to know everything. The lawyer smiled and said she had the spirit of her grandfather. He told her that her grandfather once dreamed of building something that would last forever. And now that dream was in her hands. Emma left the office with her heart burning. She knew the road would be hard, but she also knew this was her chance. When Emma returned home, Daniel was waiting. His sharp eyes studied her. He asked where she had gone. Emma lied softly and said she visited the market. Daniel laughed coldly and said she was wasting time as always. Then he turned his attention to his phone, speaking loudly about his new investments, bragging about how much money he would soon earn. Emma lowered her eyes, but her thoughts were far away. She was already planning her own steps, silent but determined. The days turned into weeks. Emma began to read books in secret. She borrowed them from the library, hiding them beneath her pillow at night. She studied every page. She learned about business, about leadership, about courage. Every word gave her strength, every lesson gave her hope. And while Daniel mocked her every day, calling her a shadow, calling her useless, Emma was quietly growing in knowledge, preparing for the future. One evening, Daniel walked into her room without warning. His eyes fell on the papers she had spread on her bed. Numbers, charts, business notes. He grabbed them with a sneer. He demanded to know what game she was playing. Emma froze, her heart raced. She whispered that they were only books, only reading for her own mind. Daniel laughed loudly. He threw the papers to the floor. He told her she would never understand the world of money. He told her she was only good for cleaning and serving. His words cut deep, but Emma remained calm, for she knew she could not reveal her truth yet. That night, as Emma picked up the scattered papers, she whispered to herself that Daniel's laughter would one day turn into silence. His mockery would one day turn into regret. She promised her heart that she would never stop learning, never stop fighting, never stop believing in herself. No matter how much pain she carried. In the following weeks, Emma returned to the lawyer. She told him she wanted to take control of her small share. She wanted to attend meetings. She wanted to see the company with her own eyes. The lawyer looked at her with surprise but also admiration. He told her the road ahead would not be easy. Many men in the company would not take her seriously, but if she truly wished it, he would stand by her side. Emma thanked him with tears in her eyes. For the first time, she felt like someone saw her worth. But danger was never far. One night, Daniel found her notebook under the pillow. He opened it and read the lines she had written. Her dreams, her plans, her hopes. He mocked her again. He told her she was chasing illusions. He warned her never to waste his money or his name on foolish dreams. Emma said nothing. She simply took the notebook back, her hands shaking but her eyes steady. She knew she could not rely on him. She would have to fight alone. And so Emma began to hide her steps even more carefully. Every night when the house slept, she studied. Every morning she rose with determination. Every day she carried her secret like a flame hidden in the dark. And though Daniel's insults grew louder, though his family's laughter grew sharper, Emma's heart only grew stronger. For she now held a secret more powerful than all their cruelty. She held the first key to her freedom. The story of Emma was no longer only about pain. It was now about the beginning of her rise. And while no one around her could see it yet, Emma herself knew the truth. She was standing at the edge of change, and her life was about to move in a direction that would shock everyone who ever doubted her. The air in the mansion grew heavy with tension. Daniel's business was failing little by little. yet he walked around with pride, pretending everything was under control. Emma watched silently. She saw his debts growing, his anger growing, his nights filled with shouting at the phone. But he never admitted weakness. Instead, he turned his frustration into sharper insults toward her. Every harsh word felt like a stone against her heart. But Emma held her secret dream inside, waiting for the right moment to rise. One morning, Emma noticed something missing. The small jewelry pieces her mother had given her long ago, the only treasure she kept from her childhood. She searched every drawer, every box, but they were gone. When she asked Daniel if he had seen them, he laughed coldly. He said he had taken them. He said he sold them to pay his debts. He did not even ask her. He did not even care about her pain. Emma stood frozen, her lips trembling, her eyes wet. She whispered that those jewels were her memories, but Daniel shrugged and walked away, saying memories do not pay bills. That night, Emma sat alone in her room. Her hands shaking, her heart breaking, she realized Daniel would never change. He would never respect her. He would never protect her. Instead, he would only take from her, crush her, and remind her of her weakness. The betrayal of losing her precious jewelry was too much, yet at the same time it opened her eyes. It told her she could no longer wait. She had to step forward. She had to stand alone. No matter how painful it would be, in the quiet of the night, Emma took out her notebook. She wrote down her promise. She promised she would never depend on Daniel again. She promised she would never allow his cruelty to decide her future. She promised she would take her grandfather's gift and turn it into strength. Her tears fell onto the paper, but she did not stop writing. Each tear was a mark of her broken past, and each word was a step toward her future. The next day, Emma returned to the lawyer. She told him she wanted to take more responsibility. She wanted to use her share in the company to make real decisions. The lawyer was surprised but impressed. He warned her that the company was weak, that many believed it was doomed, but Emma said she was ready to risk everything. The lawyer agreed to help her, and together they began to plan the first steps. Emma knew she needed money to support her plans, but she had none, so she made a bold decision. She went to the bank and applied for a loan. She offered her share in the company as security. The banker looked at her with doubt, asking if she understood the risk. Emma nodded firmly. She knew she was stepping into danger, but she also knew this was her only chance to break free from Daniel's shadow. After hours of questions and papers, she finally signed the agreement. Her hands trembling but her heart strong, she walked out of the bank with courage she never felt before. But fate was not finished testing her. One evening, Daniel entered her room again, his eyes sharp. He had found one of the loan papers hidden under her books. He grabbed it and read quickly, his face twisted with anger. He shouted that she was a fool, that she would drag his name into shame. He demanded she cancel everything at once. Emma stood tall for the first time, her voice steady. She told him this was her decision, not his. Daniel laughed bitterly. He said she would fail. He said she was nothing without him. He said she would come crawling back when the world crushed her. His words echoed like thunder, but Emma did not flinch. She simply looked into his eyes and stayed silent, silence that spoke louder than any word. That night, Daniel drank heavily, muttering about his losses. Cursing Emma for her defiance, Emma listened from her room, her heart both broken and strong. She knew the road ahead would be lonely. She knew Daniel would try to destroy her dream. But she also knew his betrayal had set her free. The woman who once bowed her head in fear was gone. The woman who once lived in silence was gone. In her place was someone new, someone ready to fight. As Emma prepared for the days to come, she had no idea that someone outside the mansion had already noticed her courage. A powerful man who watched her steps from afar. A man who saw potential in her determination. Emma did not know his name yet. She did not know his eyes were on her. But soon their paths would cross, and when that happened, her world would change forever. The betrayal that broke Emma's heart also became the fire that pushed her forward. She no longer feared the insults. She no longer feared the laughter. She no longer feared being poor, for she had already lost everything. And when a person has nothing left to lose, that person becomes unstoppable. Emma was about to discover this truth, and the world was about to witness the beginning of her rise. The morning sun rose slowly over the city. Emma stood by the window of her small room. Her hands held tightly to the notebook that now carried her plans. She had cried enough tears. She had endured enough insults. Now her heart was steady, her mind was sharp. She whispered to herself that this was the beginning. No matter how hard the road became, she would walk it with courage. Her first step was to visit the company that she now partly owned. The building looked old. The workers inside looked tired. The air was heavy with hopelessness. Emma walked in quietly. No one paid attention to her at first. They thought she was just another visitor. But when the lawyer introduced her as one of the shareholders, the staff looked at her with surprise. Some even laughed quietly. They could not believe that this small and simple woman could mean anything for the company. But Emma ignored their doubt. She smiled softly and asked to see the reports. She wanted to understand everything before speaking a single word. For days, Emma read every file she could find. She asked questions again and again. She listened carefully to every answer. At night, she returned home and studied more. She filled her notebook with notes and ideas. While Daniel mocked her behind her back, she only grew stronger. Her silence was no longer weakness, it was her shield. And behind that shield, she was slowly building a mind of steel. The company was sinking because no one cared. The managers were lazy, the workers were discouraged. The leadership was broken. Emma decided to change this from the bottom up. She began by meeting the workers. She treated them with kindness. She listened to their problems. She gave them respect that no one had given before. And slowly the workers started to believe in her. They whispered to each other that maybe this woman was different. Maybe she could lead them where others had failed. Meanwhile, Daniel's own empire was falling. His investments collapsed one after another. He borrowed money recklessly. He shouted at everyone around him, yet he never admitted defeat. When Emma returned home late from meetings, he accused her of wasting her time. He told her she would return in shame. Emma only lowered her eyes and stayed silent. She knew her actions would speak louder than his cruel words. One evening, the company faced a crisis. A supplier refused to deliver goods because payments were late. The managers panicked. Some wanted to close operations. Emma stood before them and said calmly that this was not the end. She took a deep breath and spoke with courage. She suggested new strategies. She offered to meet the supplier herself. Everyone doubted her, but when she met the supplier, she used honesty instead of arrogance. She explained the situation. She promised fair treatment, and for the first time in months, the supplier agreed to continue business. The managers stared at her with astonishment. They realized this quiet woman was not ordinary. Step by step, Emma began to fix what was broken. She cut unnecessary expenses. She encouraged new ideas. She rewarded hard work. She stood beside the workers instead of above them. The company that had been sinking slowly began to rise. Small profits appeared, small victories came, and each one built her confidence higher. Whispers spread across the business world about a mysterious woman leading an old company back to life. But no one knew yet who she really was. At home, Daniel grew restless. His debts consumed him, his pride blinded him. He did not see Emma's progress. He only saw her as the same poor wife he had always mocked. He laughed when he saw her tired from work. He told her she was wasting her health. He told her no one would ever respect her. Emma smiled quietly and said nothing. But inside she felt the growing power of her success, a power she no longer needed to hide from herself. Weeks turned into months and the company began to shine again. Small investors started to notice, new opportunities opened. Emma signed deals that others thought impossible. Her name began to circle in hidden corners of the city. Businessmen whispered about her skill. Some admired her, some feared her, but all began to realize she was not weak. She was not invisible. She was becoming a force that could not be ignored. One night, as Emma sat at her desk reading yet another report, she felt a strange peace. The same woman who once cried in silence was now guiding a company. The same woman who once feared speaking now gave orders. The same woman who once bowed to insults now stood taller than anyone imagined. Her rise was quiet but powerful, like the slow climb of the sun that no one notices until the whole sky is bright. But Emma knew this was only the beginning. She knew greater challenges waited ahead. Bigger battles, fiercer enemies. She also knew Daniel's empire was falling faster each day. And sooner or later his downfall would crash into her rise. She did not fear it. She was ready, for she had already faced betrayal, pain, and loneliness, and she had survived them all. The poor wife was no longer only poor. She was becoming something greater. She was becoming a silent fighter, a leader born from suffering, a woman shaped by fire, and the world had not yet seen the full strength she carried within her heart. The city was buzzing with whispers. Business circles spoke of a mysterious woman who had turned a sinking company into a rising star. Journalists tried to uncover her name. Competitors tried to block her progress, yet Emma moved forward quietly. Her focus sharp, her determination unshaken. She worked night and day. Her hands tired but her spirit strong. The seed her grandfather left her had grown into a tree, and now its branches were reaching toward the sky. One morning the lawyer entered her office with shining eyes. He placed a document on the table. It was an offer from a global corporation. They wanted to partner with Emma's company. The value was beyond anything she had imagined. Billions were on the line, and with this deal the company would no longer be small. It would become a giant. Emma's heart raced as she read the words. Tears filled her eyes, but she quickly wiped them. She whispered softly that this was only the beginning. The lawyer nodded and said the world was finally about to know her name. News spread like fire across the country. Every newspaper carried the headline. The poor company that once stood on the edge of collapse had signed the biggest deal of the decade. At the center of the storm was Emma, the woman no one had noticed before. Cameras followed her steps, reporters begged for interviews. Investors called day and night. Everyone wanted a piece of the legend she was becoming, and the people who once mocked her name now spoke it with respect and awe. At the mansion, Daniel sat with disbelief. His phone buzzed with messages. His friends asked if the woman in the headlines was really his wife. His family stared at the screen in shock. The same Emma they had called weak and useless was now the face of power and success. Daniel's pride broke into pieces. He refused to believe it. He shouted that it was a lie, yet deep inside he knew the truth. The wife he had insulted, the wife he had betrayed, the wife he had mocked again and again, had now become greater than he ever dreamed. Emma stood on a stage for the first time. Bright lights shone on her face. Thousands of people filled the hall. Millions watched through screens. She wore a simple dress, but her presence was stronger than any jewel. She looked at the crowd with calm eyes. She remembered every insult, every laugh, every tear. But she did not speak of revenge. Instead, she spoke of hope. She told the world that anyone who is broken can still rise. Anyone who is belittled can still become powerful. Her words touched every heart. Her voice echoed across nations. And when she finished, the hall shook with applause. Daniel watched from a distance. His hands trembling, his debts growing, his empire collapsing. The man who once believed he was untouchable was now nothing compared to the woman he had crushed. He thought of the nights he mocked her, the days he ignored her, the times he stole from her. Regret filled his chest like heavy stones. He whispered to himself that he wanted her back, but even he knew it was too late. Emma had outgrown him. She had outgrown his world. She was no longer within his reach at home. The same family who once laughed at Emma now sat in silence. They replayed her speech again and again. They could not believe the quiet woman they once insulted was now celebrated across the world. The sisters who mocked her beauty now envied her grace. The mother who called her useless now wished she had treated her with kindness. But Emma had no time for their regrets. She was already looking toward the future. Her eyes set on higher goals. Her heart set on building more than wealth. She wanted to build a legacy. Emma expanded the company. She opened new branches. She hired people who had once been rejected. She gave opportunities to the poor. She believed no one should be belittled the way she had been. Her actions made the world admire her even more. She was not only powerful in money, she was powerful in kindness, and this balance made her name shine brighter than gold. People began to call her the 200 billion legend, a title that spread across continents. But behind the admiration also came envy. Rivals began to plot. Enemies began to gather. They wanted to bring her down. They wanted to see her fail. Yet Emma did not fear them. She had faced betrayal in her own home. She had faced humiliation in her own family. Compared to that, the outside world was nothing. She walked with quiet strength, unshaken by threats, untouched by gossip. Her focus remained steady. Her eyes remained forward. The night after her great speech, Emma stood by the window of her office. The city lights glittered below her. She thought of the girl she used to be, the poor wife sitting in a small room crying in silence, clutching her grandfather's picture. She thought of how far she had come. She smiled softly, not with arrogance, but with gratitude. She whispered to herself that the journey was not over. It had only just begun, and the world had not yet seen the full legend she would become. The night was quiet, but Emma's name was everywhere. Newspapers shouted her success. Television showed her face again and again. People around the world spoke of her story. The poor wife who had once been insulted had become the 200 billion legend. Yet Emma herself stood calm. She did not let pride rule her. She remembered her pain. She remembered her promises. She knew her journey was never only about money. It was about dignity, about strength, about showing that no broken soul must remain broken forever. But Daniel could not accept what had happened. His empire had collapsed. His debts consumed him. His friends abandoned him. His family blamed him. And still he clung to the belief that Emma was his. He walked through the city like a shadow, angry and bitter, until one evening he appeared at the doors of her new headquarters. The guards tried to stop him, but Emma allowed him inside. She wanted to face him one last time. Not with fear, but with the strength she had earned through years of pain. Daniel entered her office. His clothes wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He looked nothing like the proud man he once was. He fell to his knees and begged Emma for forgiveness. His voice cracked as he said he had been blind. He admitted he had mocked her, betrayed her, stolen from her. Yet now he needed her, he wanted her back. He said he loved her still. His words spilled out like water, but Emma listened in silence, her face calm, her eyes steady, her heart strong. When he finished speaking, Emma rose from her chair. She walked slowly toward him. She looked down at the man who once made her life a prison, and she said in a soft voice that he had once told her she was nothing without him, but now the truth was clear. He was nothing without her. Her words cut deeper than any blade. Daniel bowed his head, his tears falling to the floor. But Emma did not hate him. She did not scream. She did not take revenge and cruelty. She simply turned away. For leaving him behind was the greatest revenge of all. News of their meeting spread quickly. Reporters asked if Emma would forgive him, if she would take him back. But Emma only smiled and said forgiveness was not the same as returning to the chains of the past. She had forgiven him in her heart, but she had outgrown him. She belonged to a higher path now, one that looked toward the future, one that carried the weight of millions of lives she could change with her power and wealth. Emma began building schools for children who had no education. She opened hospitals for the poor who had no care. She created jobs for women who had once been told they were weak. Every step she took was guided by the pain she once carried. She turned her suffering into strength for others. She became more than a business leader, she became a symbol, a light for those who had been silenced and broken. Daniel faded from the public eye, no longer powerful, no longer respected. People who once praised him now ignored him. He lived in the shadow of the woman he once belittled. And though he sometimes dreamed of winning her back, deep in his heart he knew it was impossible. For Emma had become untouchable. Her legend was greater than anything he could ever reach. On the day of her greatest celebration, Emma stood on a stage again. Thousands filled the hall. Millions watched across the world. She looked at the faces of young girls, of poor families, of broken souls who had come to see her. She raised her voice and told them that no insult, no betrayal, no pain should ever decide their worth. She told them that every heart holds a fire, and if that fire is protected, it will one day light the whole world. Her words shook the hall. Her voice reached every corner of the earth, and when she finished, the people rose to their feet with endless applause. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. She saw her grandfather smiling. She saw the poor wife she once was, the woman crying in silence, and she whispered to herself that she had kept her promise. She had shown the world who she truly was. She had become the legend no one believed in, the legend no one saw coming, the legend that would live beyond her own lifetime. The poor wife was gone forever. In her place stood a woman whose name echoed with power and hope, a woman who had risen from ashes to light the sky, a woman who proved that dignity is worth more than gold, and kindness is stronger than cruelty. And as the crowd chanted her name again and again, Emma smiled gently, not with pride but with peace, for she knew her story was no longer only her own. It belonged to every soul who dared to rise after being broken.